The dust swirled around Marcus Webb's worn boots as he stood at the edge of the county livestock auction, his calloused hands gripping the last 2 quarters in his pocket. 3 years of drought had turned his once thriving ranch into a graveyard of dreams, and today he'd come to sell his last breeding mare just to pay the electric bill. The auctioneer's voice droned on, lot after lot, while Marcus felt the weight of 47 years pressing down on his shoulders like the relentless Texas sun. That's when he saw her. In the far corner of the pen, away from the other horses, stood the smallest foal he'd ever laid eyes on. She couldn't have been more than 3 months old, her coat a mottled patchwork of brown and white that looked almost sickly in the harsh afternoon light. Her legs seemed too thin to support even her tiny frame, and one ear drooped sideways as if it had forgotten how to stand up straight. The other ranchers walked past without a second glance, some even chuckling at the pathetic sight. But Marcus saw something else in those dark, liquid eyes. He saw himself. Before you judge what happened next, ask yourself this: have you ever looked at something broken and seen not what it was, but what it could become? Because that moment of recognition would change everything. The auctioneer seemed almost embarrassed when the foal's turn came. "All right, folks, let's move this along. What am I bid for this little filly here? She's undersized, no papers, mother rejected her. Who'll start at $5? Silence filled the arena like a held breath. $2? $1? Still nothing? Marcus felt his feet moving before his mind caught up. 50 cents, he heard himself say, his voice barely above a whisper. Laughter rippled through the crowd, but the auctioneer, eager to be done with it, slammed his gavel down. Marcus named her Penny, partly because of what he'd paid, partly because she reminded him of something his grandmother used to say: find a penny, pick it up, and all day long you'll have good luck. He needed more than luck, though. He needed a miracle. Loading Penny into his rusty trailer, Marcus didn't notice the well-dressed man in the pressed suit watching from behind the bleachers, speaking quietly into his phone. The first month was harder than Marcus expected. Penny refused most feed, her tiny body seemingly determined to give up. He spent nights in the barn, sleeping on hay bales, feeding her with a bottle every few hours like a newborn baby. His neighbor, old Joe Patterson, stopped by one morning and shook his head. "Marcus, that foal ain't gonna make it." "You're throwing good money after bad." But Marcus had stopped listening to practical advice the day he bought a dying ranch with his last savings. He'd learned that sometimes the most foolish decisions are the ones that save you. Then something shifted. Maybe it was the hand-mixed formula Marcus created after calling every veterinarian within 100 miles. Maybe it was the classical music he played in the barn after reading that it calmed horses. Or maybe Penny just decided she wasn't ready to quit. She started eating, then walking without stumbling, then running in awkward, joyful circles around the paddock. By 6 months, she'd grown into her legs. By 9 months, Marcus noticed something remarkable. When Penny really ran, she moved like water flowing downhill, effortless and impossibly fast. On a crisp October morning, a silver Mercedes pulled up Marcus's dirt driveway. The man in the press suit stepped out, introducing himself as Thomas Caldwell, a thoroughbred racing scout. "Mr. Webb, I've been tracking that filly since the auction." Her mother was Midnight's Destiny, one of the finest unregistered racing mares in 3 states. The paperwork was lost in a fire, which is why she ended up at that auction. "Your Penny, she's got championship bloodlines." Marcus felt the world tilt slightly. "I'd like to offer you $200,000 for her right now." $200,000. It was more money than Marcus had seen in his entire life. He could pay off the ranch, buy new stock, repair every fence and building. He looked at Penny, grazing peacefully in the morning sun, her coat now gleaming like polished mahogany. She raised her head and nickered softly, walking over to nuzzle his shoulder. In that moment, Marcus made his second foolish decision. "She's not for sale, Mr. Caldwell, but I'd like to race her, if you'd help me do it right." What followed was the stuff of legend. Penny, the 50-cent foal nobody wanted, began winning races. Not just winning, dominating, track reds fell. Purses accumulated, but more than that, she became a symbol. Every underdog, every person who'd been counted out, saw themselves in her story. Marcus became not a millionaire from selling her, but from racing her, from believing when no one else would. He used the winnings to save not just his ranch, but 12 others in his county facing foreclosure. 5 years later, Marcus stood in the winner's circle at the Kentucky Derby, his hand on Penny's neck, tears streaming down his weathered face. The reporters asked him his secret. He thought about that day at the auction, about 50 cents, about every moment he could have given up but didn't. "There's no secret," he said quietly. "Just love what others overlook, believe in what others reject, and understand that value isn't determined by price tags or pedigrees. It's determined by heart." As the cameras flashed and the crowd roared, Marcus whispered into Penny's ear, "We saved each other, didn't we, girl?" If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you that your current circumstance isn't your final destination, then do me a favor. Share it with someone who needs to hear that miracles aren't just possible, they're waiting to be recognized. Sometimes they come in the smallest, most unlikely packages. Sometimes they cost 50 cents. Sometimes they're standing right in front of you, just waiting for someone to see their worth. Don't scroll past your miracle. Recognize it. Believe in it. And watch what happens when you do.